You know those conversations that you have with somebody where the conversation just sort of flows? There's no awkward silences. There's no polite nodding through a story that you don't really care about. Just two dudes who actually like talking to each other about stuff that actually matters. Well, Chris Nguyen is one of those folks for me. I hope his name sounds familiar because he's been on the show before. He built the UX Playbook in one of the most recognized design education brands on the internet, at least from my perspective. I don't know what your actual numbers are. And now he's launching something new called Rectangles. It's a live stream built around the design conversations that he wishes he had years ago. So today we're just going to hang out and we're going to talk about whatever comes up. So stick around. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome. I am super stoked to have you. How often does your team stare at a blank Figma canvas, unsure where to start? Well, this episode is brought to you by Mobbin, the ultimate UI and UX design inspiration library. And Mobbin gives your team instant access to over 600,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows from apps you love, with new content added every single week. And with their new AI-powered search, finding exactly what you need takes seconds, whether you're searching by app category, UI pattern, or just a specific feature. And my team and I use Mobbin whenever we're kicking off a new feature. It's our go-to for exploring inspiration and seeing what the rest of the industry is doing. And it's the kind of tool that makes your whole team faster. So ready to level up your design process? Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and never run out of inspiration again. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe for all their support. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then tell your mom and them. So here's the thing about returning guests. Sometimes you bring somebody back because the topic demands it. They got new research, new framework, new angle to unpack. And sometimes you just bring them back because your conversations are just that good and you want to keep it going. Chris Nguyen has been building in public for years. He built the UX Playbook. He has a newsletter. He's got a YouTube channel, live events. He's got a Slack community called Backlog. And now he's kicking off a new project called Rectangles. It's a live stream that he describes as being the design conversations that he wished he had years ago, but you get to be in the room. He's been through the burnout. He's made the pivots. He's done the thing where you hit a number that sounds impressive and then you realize it nearly broke you. And I'll be totally honest, I know exactly what that's like. And Chris is exactly who I want to talk to today. Not somebody with a perfectly packaged story, somebody like me and maybe like you who's still in it, still figuring it out. And I think most importantly, somebody who's honest enough to be willing to say so. Chris, welcome back to Beyond UX Design. I am so excited to have you on. Shoot the shit today. No specific agenda. We're gonna chat. Two dudes hanging out. What's up, dude? How's it going, man?
It's going good, man. And I'm so happy that Mobbin is also a supporter of my show.
Yeah, right.
And so big fan of Mobbin.
Crossover, Mobbin action.
Love that we're both partnering with them. And yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, it's been a long time. 100 episodes you've done since I've been on. So how's that? I mean, 100 episodes deep, that's...
Oh, man, it's crazy, dude.
Quite a lot of recording time on your belt.
Man, it's crazy, dude. It's one of those things where, like, I got a full-time job, too. So, like, finding the time to do that. The recording isn't the hard part, dude. It's the mixing and all that bullshit that goes along with it. That's actually kind of rough. But, you know how that is, dude. I mean, it is what it is. But
is it more of a grind, or are there, like, these tools out there now that you're like, okay, 80% of the work's done and I'm just tweaking the knobs?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I use Descript. And Descript makes it really easy, but it's one of those things, like AI, it's one of those things, there's a gotcha in there because it makes it really easy. But then when you run out of credits, you can't do anything. So you're stuck. So I actually find myself trying to use AI sparingly so that I can actually use the credits wisely so that I'm not wasting it all on one episode. And then I've got 2 episodes, 3 episodes to do, and I can't, find and replace the filler words or whatever. So yeah, it's been fun. I've actually found myself using 2 tools. I'll go to Claude, copy the transcript. And so what I've been doing, because I've noticed that you've probably seen this too, when I post a full episode to YouTube, nobody watches it. It's just a complete waste of time. So I go and try to cut it down to like highlight reels of 10, 15 minutes. Underlord on Descript is very bad at cutting it down. So I actually go to Claude and I'm like, copy and trace the transcript, go back with it, gives me the cut points. Then I'll just go back and manually do it in Descript. And then I'll use the AI tools in Descript to find the filler words and shorten long silences and stuff. So I don't know. I'm trying to find creative ways to use AI so that it doesn't take me as long, but it ends up being workarounds that actually take a long time still too.
Yeah, I've tried Descript for that exact purpose. And yeah, it took me forever to cut it. I didn't use the AI feature to help find highlights, but I just kind of did it myself. But yeah, it took forever, and you can't really fine tune that much of the edits. It's only like filler words and stuff, but anything else that you actually want to do with it, if you're thinking about even a longer video, let's just say a 5-minute horizontal clip, it gets even more tough, and you're like, oh no, it's laggy, it's buggy. But yeah, that's why I had to have an editor to do that stuff. It was just too much. It was too much.
Here's what I want to know. You asked me what I've been up to 100 episodes. What have you been up to, man? You have been doing so much shit. I'm like following you online, just in awe of all the stuff that you managed to create. And I'm just like, damn, I'm so jealous. I love all this stuff Chris is doing. 100 episodes. That's a couple years. I can't remember the date. You've been doing a lot too, man. What have you been up to?
Yeah, a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, man.
So I think since we last spoke, I started this thing called Backlog because I thought it'd be interesting. It ended up not going anywhere and fizzled out. And like this community, and I was like, okay, cool. I still have folks in there, but it's not paid, it's invite only. I'm like, okay, if there's some payment around it, I feel guilty by not delivering value. How about we just hang out and chat and share a bunch of stuff? And then honestly, I think even though I've launched a bunch of projects, I think I've been in a bit of a funk. And last year I took like maybe 4 months off, maybe 5, maybe 6, a lot of time off from actually doing something really interesting. Because at the beginning, I think when we met, and at the beginning of UX Playbook, I was really active. And I think I launched like 12 products in 12 months, something ridiculous like that, where I was just like launch after launch. It was just like, just grinding on content and products. But yeah, last year was a bit of a slowdown year, and everything changed from what I'm doing, like running on my own to what it is now. So I guess it's from being a product company, we transitioned to a media company. And that's not like on purpose. It was more accidental, where that's the balance of revenue, and it just changed over time. And so I'm leaning into this like media thing because the signs are there, and it's like probably a year too late, but at least I'm doing it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
It's one of those things you think about the product side versus the media side. And like, I've done the same thing, right? Like, I don't know, I've got like art prints and stickers and shit I could just sell and let it sit, and books and everything else. What I found is it's hard to make those things. It's even harder to get people to pay for them. And so there's a grind constantly selling, promoting. And I've gotten a similar kind of funk for myself too, where I'm just like, I just enjoy going on and talking to people, making cool videos. Cool is relative, I guess. It depends if you ask who you ask if my videos are cool or not. Informative, maybe. I don't know. It's like one of those things I really enjoy, that aspect of it. The live shows, like I'm doing like MC, like UXCon 25 in October, and like stuff like that. Like getting out, and I just have more fun doing it. The interesting thing though, and I'm going to dig into this with you, is like, there's like the set it and forget it aspect of selling a product, like especially a digital product, versus the hands-on, constantly creating, constantly doing that kind of stuff. And I'm curious because I have a certain thought in my head, but I want to hear it from your perspective. How is that going from that sort of selling products that can kind of sell itself while you sleep to having to constantly be moving, constantly be involved, planning, executing, delivering? What's that like, man? How is that transition? Is that something you've been thinking about?
Yeah, great question. I think I had to do both. The part where, okay, yes, I think the difference would be the content itself. So I guess when you're a product company, the ultimate goal is to get someone in your funnel so you can sell them something, right? And so you're always trying to subtly push the product and then push folks down the funnel to the point of conversion. And I think at one time I was just like so sick of it. I'm talking about the same thing over and over again. It's another portfolio post. And I'm like, God, help me. Just kill me now, right? I've beaten this topic to death. So yes, the product itself did sell itself, but there was a lot of uphill battles with just the marketing itself. So now if I'm thinking about what I'm doing, like turning it into a media company, and this is what Rectangle is, and we'll talk about that later, but having a media company, is like the product is the content. So I haven't thought about that for a very long time because everything was about product, and the product is the product, not the content. The content is a distribution mechanism. But I think that's also why that I've gotten a bit lazy with the whole tweaking the content side of things and making it more interesting, at least to me, and just having fun with it. So I'm very looking forward to revitalizing that fun, but also, yes, it is a bit of a hamster wheel because when the media is the product, you've got to make hits, dude. That is your benchmark now, and you are an artist and you are as good as your last song. And then you're also on that feast or famine cycle when you're thinking about, okay, I've got to get a brand sponsorship and then another one and then another one. So yes, there are definitely cons to that, but I think it's a natural evolution of, okay, product first, figure out distribution. Now you figured out distribution. Can you actually double down on distribution, screw the product? Because that was just something that worked in the past that might not work again, especially with the advent of AI. And then eventually I'll probably go back into product, but with a different take, with a different angle. But I think that's how I'm thinking about it. But I think both are just have their grinds in itself. And I don't know. Yeah. But at the moment, I think this is the bet for at least the next couple of years.
I do want to actually dig into rectangles now and learn more about that. And I love this pivot though, because when I think about the stuff that I've done in the past, and I think about 100-something episodes in, man, get bored with it and stuff. And when I think about the stuff that I would love to do, it's exactly what you're building with rectangles, which is really exciting for me to see you doing that. But the live shows, I love the engagement of the live shows and stuff. Anyway, I don't want to spoil it for everybody listening. I'll let you kind of explain. But tell us a little bit about rectangles, man, and what you're trying to do with it and what's it about and everything else, man. I want to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, when I was going through this, what the hell do I do next? I was like, okay, if we double down on media, what does that look like? And we had a perfect base where, okay, there was already a live stream happening, and that was completely by accident. And that was just because I invited someone on a live stream. And then it was like, okay, we do it again. And then like now we're, I don't know how many episodes deep, maybe about 60 episodes deep. And then at the same time, building the newsletter, again, it was like building these kind of like touch points for the funnel to sell the product. And then actually what people enjoy, even though they did enjoy the product, but it's like, I think these are just more kind of fun ways to interact with the folks that you're serving. And so it was like, okay, how do we do this? So I thought about just combining the live stream, combining the newsletter, and separating it from like the personal brand and to have it be its own brand. And really, it's a design media brand focused on live conversations, distilled takeaways, and a weekly newsletter. But there's so much more we can do. I'm interested about organizing live events, right? What does that like, a live meetup, what does that look like? Or what about a weekly roundup of design stuff? But super casual. And because there's so much news, because I already consolidate a lot of that stuff in the newsletter, I'm like, why can't I make it a live show? Or what about office hours? Or what about all these things that I think would be a fun format to share with folks other than just like a LinkedIn post. So it's supposed to be wildly practical and actually helpful. So that's why I'm going with it. And rectangles is just the name and a silly one at that. But yeah, really, I guess a metaphor for reduction, simplicity, and literally the starting point of every design, right? It's just a rectangle. Don't take it too seriously. But when you stack a bunch of rectangles together, it becomes something cool. So that's where I'm taking it. A lot is still work in progress, but like the design of the brand is there. And then we're working on the website, but that's the trajectory. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of what other stuff is going to come out. Because I think when I think about really, I guess it's like a pet project for me. I can now start product development and it's not the product, it's like the content. Now I'm getting back into that experimentation phase where I really enjoy it and it's like my zone. So I think that's what Rectangles is.
I love the name. I love the concept. I love what you just talked about, everything being like starting off with like just a series of rectangles kind of put together. And that's like what I love about this too, though. It's not just UX design, UI design, it's design. The cool thing about this too, man, I don't know if this is like your plan, but UX is such a small niche. It's such a tiny niche when you think about the media landscape, right? Design in general, still kind of niche, but much, much more broad than just UX design. And what I love about what you're doing, it kind of reminds me a lot of the Design Better guys and like the stuff they're doing. And they talk to people in TV and movies and authors and everything else. And it's just beyond the software bit of it. Is that like your plan to go more broad?
I think it does open me up to speak to a lot of different folks that are quote unquote creatives or creative adjacent fields. I think for the focus now is definitely designers in tech, and not just UX designers, but web designers, graphic, anybody in software at the minute, I think is really interesting to speak to, because I think that's where I came from. So I'm probably more inclined to speak to those folks. Let's see how big this gets. But that's really good. I think I'm going to hold that in my head and be like, okay, how can we make it more applicable to creatives in general?
The other thing too I want to give a shout out is the visual design. As a millennial, an elder millennial, child of the late 80s, early 90s, the aesthetic that you're going for. And if anyone hasn't seen it, check it out. You posted on LinkedIn, I think probably on X and stuff as well. But it's got like a very early 90s analog vibe, playing around with like CD art and VHS and vinyl and stuff, and as like the thumbnails for the videos. Anyway, I totally dig that, dude. That's 100% my jam. as a geriatric millennial. So anyway, I just want to give you a call out there. Now though, like early 90s shit is all back in style. So I don't know, everything comes full circle.
A lot of brands are thinking about how do we pull in Gen Z, and one of their strategies is we need to give them a sense of nostalgia, something that they haven't experienced, but they know the vibe of. But being a millennial myself, that's what we grew up on. So I think it's definitely not as sterile. I wanted something tactile, texture. I wanted physical metaphors as well, because I think that's really important, especially when it's just content and it's just digital shit. We want that physical metaphor. We're craving for it. And yeah, just so happened that I like that aesthetic too. Try to be more purposeful with how, even the website that we're building now, like how do we make it more physical than it's just someone scrolling on the page? And we're playing around with, as you said, vinyls, things in folders, things actually moving or working together on the page with clear texture and layers. You can see that in the posts on LinkedIn and stuff like that, and the banners. With physical objects, textures and stuff like that, that is what I want to go for. And I think it fits with just having real conversations with designers, like what you're doing on this show. It doesn't feel like it's trying too hard, and it can be messy, it can be imperfect. And I think that's the vibe, right? Old vinyl record that might have scratches on it or marks everywhere. Like that's what we're kind of going for.
I kind of see this as a metaphor too for your path, if you think about it, right? You started out thinking back, if you haven't listened to episode 51, go back and listen to your backstory and all that stuff. But bright-eyed, bushy-tailed UX designer, getting in there, move your way up, head of design, made a bunch of mistakes, fucked up a whole lot. Realized you were burnt out. You're like, fuck it, I'm out. You started doing something else. I don't know if you thought, maybe I'm like an art critic, like thinking too deeply about this, but I kind of see that as a symbol for Chris moving through the years and older and wiser with the scars to show it. I don't know, maybe.
No, that's beautiful, dude. That's beautiful.
Maybe you could use that, by the way.
Yeah, okay. I'll clip this. But it took me so long to like even think of the visuals and to work with someone, because I was like, okay, if this is a brand that I'm going to get behind, and it's not like UX Playbook, which I just smash together, whatever, run a mile a minute, what do I do? So I was thinking about this for so long. I put a Notion doc with like thousands of words of just me like brain dumping. But finally I plucked up the courage. I was like, okay, I'm going to work with someone. And I think that's one of the learnings that I had. It's just like, in order to articulate it to someone else, that's when it forces you to make these decisions. When you're always talking to yourself in your head, it's really hard to make movements, especially when it's such a big task, right? It's just, you're reinventing the brand, you're doing all this stuff. And the fact is also, we worked on a 2-week sprint, gave me all the right motivation to get it out the door. And it was like, okay, let's just say like a year of not doing anything, but thinking about it. So we just have 2 weeks to do this. So let's make sure it counts. I think that's one of the things I learned from this process of, hey, if you can't do it yourself, admit that real quick and get someone on board and shorten that timeline so you can get something out the door.
I love that you just kicked yourself into gear and just did it. I think that's really inspiring, actually. And I'm thinking back to like our last episode when you were on. The main theme of that was the concept of a designpreneur and this sort of designer turned entrepreneur who's kind of doing their thing. And it's funny, dude, in the last, I wish I could remember, 2 years, I can't remember, 1.5 years, whatever it was. I feel like the industry has changed so much. Jobs are completely different now than it was a few months ago. And I'm just thinking back to my own I just redid my portfolio site finally, because I was looking at it and I'm like, I never mentioned AI. I never mentioned anything about this new kind of process. And I was looking back and I had this section, all these designers years ago had my process. And so I had this thing about this very analog process, pen and paper, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just thinking, this is the way a dinosaur would talk, quote unquote dinosaur. Not knocking anybody, by the way. Anyway, but I'm like, I got to change this. So I looked back and I was thinking about it at work, right? Thinking about how much has changed in such a short amount of time. And I have a point, by the way, I'll circle back to it. But we just made the decision 2 weeks ago to not renew our Figma license. And that is mind-blowing.
That is mind-blowing, yeah.
Now, because designers are now shipping code in Cursor. So we are kicking off every project now with a spec doc, PRD, plugged into Cursor, and we design with prompts in Cursor. And then building using our code base and production-ready code, front-end code. Which blows my mind because that is not even a conversation we were having at the beginning of the year. It isn't. And that is something that just started probably in February. And it is already middle of May. And we have decided we are not renewing our Figma license. And circling back to this concept of a designpreneur, though this is something we talked about last time, is you've got to take your career into your own hands because you cannot rely on anybody else to guarantee you have a job. And when I think about our current landscape of work and what you're doing, the designpreneur taking that, all of the pivots and everything else in the design industry, you're pivoting, everybody's pivoting. My point here is maybe this is less of a question. The whole story just reinforces, I think, this idea that what you're trying to do is something every single designer, whether they're junior, senior, or maybe about to retire, they don't have to worry about this, but figuring out how to do something for yourself that doesn't rely on a 9-to-5 for your sole source of income. And you're figuring that out. Just a lot of platitudes here, I guess. But it's so inspiring to me to see another designer take their career into their own hands. And like I said, for me, it's like, if somebody asked me, should I get into UX design right now? I'd be like, no, go to trade school, learn how to be an electrician, because you're guaranteed to have a job in at least 10, 15 years till the robots start doing that for you.
Yeah. And I think they saw this on the horizon, right? Where that's why they started acquiring all these AI companies, right? They just did Weavy for like image workflow gen, and they have Figma Make and all these sort of AI tools, so people don't leave and so it's sticky. I guess I have a question for you regarding the whole leaving Figma, which is absolutely nuts, tactically for what your team is doing. If your team is not using Figma, what about maintaining your design system? Is that also outside of Figma and it's actually now in code? Or how do you build new components and things like that? Do you have an existing system or how does that work?
So we use Ant. Maybe you've ever heard of Ant?
Yep.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So Ant, if you're listening and not familiar, Ant is a component library, a React component library for anybody who's not aware. So what we did was we started with Ant. Ant had a Figma library that we took and then modified extensively to become our design system. But in the background, it's still Ant. So what we did was we took those components, and this was pre-AI, I guess. The engineers took that, modified it. We had basically a style sheet, CSS file that was like our own custom variables. And Ant's really cool because you can literally customize every aspect of it, like border radius, padding, margins, font sizes, line heights, literally everything. There's a whole series of variables, I guess, or that the engineering team took and converted to React components. They had Storybook. So they're using Storybook to visualize those components. So with AI, we've got Cursor connected to our repos. We've got the Storybook components all built. And so what happens in theory now is it's pulling that library that was already been created and builds new front-end pages, features, whatever, using that code. That means that we don't have a canvas design tool anymore, but what we do have is Storybook. Now, what we looked at and didn't work was Code Connect, because what we were thinking originally was we'd be able to take Code Connect. If you're not familiar with Code Connect, anybody listening, so basically using an MCP server to push and pull changes to your Figma files, but it doesn't really work as intuitively as you would think. So designers now are really designing in Cursor. We're designing in prompts from a spec file.
Okay, so have you basically taken and then like completely run with it the designers still get caught up where it's like, wait, hold on a minute. We actually need to think about this component or the way this works in a different way. That is not necessarily something we have already. Let's just say, I don't know, like you guys are building an AI tool within it. And it's not as simple just as like a chat box, right? Like it's got to be different. The workflows are different and maybe the experience is different. Have you guys run into problems like that? Or you're like, no, it's pretty robust for what we have?
Well, run into problems not yet because it's only been like a month, right? So like we're still in the very, very early stages of this, and there's a lot of concern with everybody, not just the design team, product, engineering, everybody, that will end up with this kind of an issue going forward, not having a playground, a canvas to just try a bunch of stuff. We're going to shift to either FigJam only or Miro or some other kind of canvas whiteboarding tool that allows us to visualize, like screenshot stuff and compare it and add notes and comments. Because one of the things that's like kind of cool with our workflow is we use Vercel. I don't know if you're familiar with Vercel, but it's basically like, for anybody not aware that's listening, you integrate with your repo and then it uses the Vercel app to then deploy. And that app, it's really cool. It has a bunch of tools like accessibility tools, and there's a comment feature. You can view branches side by side, like swap back and forth between branches. So Vercel is really cool, and it allows us to do that comment feature that we lost from Figma. In the cursor, you could pull those comments and be like, take those comments and apply the whatever and take those into account and it'll rebuild it based on the comments. So that's really neat. But anyway, so yeah, it's so early, dude. I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest. We might at some point in the future decide this is a terrible experiment that failed completely. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is this: it's expensive. And this is the thing, AI, it promises everything. But when it comes to actually execute on it on a tactical level, it is very expensive to pay for Figma Make credits, Cursor credits, Claude, Gemini, like all these various AI tools. It's just like pick one and we're going to pay for that one. And it isn't that these other tools can't do the job. So it's not to say Figma doesn't work for everybody. It's to say that our team is not paying for Figma anymore because it's expensive. So we'll still have the free Figma and we'll be able to pull in stuff, but there's limitations, 3 files, 3 artboards, things like that. So I don't know, dude. To be honest, I have no idea what's going to happen.
I think most designers know this, but if you don't, is that you could pretty much survive of Figma for free for your whole design career.
Now.
And I think I have personally. I've just got so many
exactly the
team things, whatever, right? 3 artboards, like 3, and then they're everywhere, but it doesn't matter. So, but yeah, but he doesn't know you can survive.
Dude, it's funny you mentioned that because when I was a mentor on Mento Design Academy for a long time, and I got the education Figma license for free. And when Mento closed shop, they don't do the mentoring anymore. So they stopped the license and I had to figure something out. And I had so many so I did the same thing, dude. Just go and create a bunch of teams, 3 artboards. Luckily, I had a bunch of stuff that had the artboards already created. If you delete them, you don't get them back, so don't delete them. But so anyway, I had to do that. Yeah,
exactly. Just a lot of pages, and if you remove one, you can't. Yeah, I've got that too. One of those old ass files. That's so funny, man. Yeah. Wow. Wild times though. No canvas design tool in your team, and you're basically prototyping straight out of the gate, which is with natural language. That is wild.
And it's a lot of collaboration. The thing that's really interesting, though, is it blurs the lines between everybody's role, which gets back to my point originally, which is ambiguity leads to, at a certain point, confusion, which leads to worry, which leads to stress, which leads to all these other things. And so as a designer, I think looking to designpreneurs is a really great way to just put your financial eggs in more than one basket so that you are not relying on that 9 to 5 as your 100% sole source of income. And at this point, I forgot where I was going with that, but I think my point here was getting back to rectangles. What I love about this is, here's what I would say. I don't think design is dead. I don't think UX is dead. I think there will always be a need for those roles, but I think the industry is changing so much that I don't know what to expect 6 months from now. And I think opening your potential audience base up to beyond just UX design to anybody who's interested in just big D design, I think is a really smart move. And I don't know, I just love that. I love what you're doing. Again, I went off on a tangent and I forgot what I was going to ask you, but that's basically it.
Dude, I'm following your footsteps, honestly, because this podcast has been running for so long. I didn't even know if I wanted to start a pod And I was the lazy person. I was like, no, let me just do a live stream. And it immediately turned into something. So I'm in a stage of, again, experimentation. But because it's more media focused and content focused, that stuff doesn't really last, right? If you spend a lot of time building a product, it's kind of your baby and you try to push your hardest and you need to find product market fit, you need to validate all this stuff, right? But with content, because you could make it in such a short space of time, you're almost less precious about it. So there's almost more feedback loops and interesting experiments you can run a lot quicker. And I didn't really think about content like that before because I was just so focused on, does this drive to the outcome I wanted, the product? But now if the media is the product, then that playground has just opened up so much more. And I'm just very excited on what's going to happen and what this means. I don't just want to be focused on AI tooling. I want the conversations to be much broader, and to your point of maybe even opening it up, because I think craft is one thing, right? The tooling, the in the weeds, that conversation is good, but that's in a specific place in your career, and those are the conversations you have there. Now, I guess everyone's talking about it because it's changed so much. But I also want to talk about career, like the thing that you were saying. What is a career? How do we navigate it? What's the ups? What's the downs? What's the middles? What's the sideways? And then the final piece is like, so there's three pieces: craft, career, and then the final is calling. So it's almost like the craft is what do you want to be good at? And then the career is like, what do you want to be known for? And then the calling is like, what do you want to leave behind? Or what do you want to be your stamp? And I think the calling part is really interesting because when do we talk about it? Maybe we call it something else like passion. 95% of people don't know what their calling is or quote unquote passion. So diving into these topics, I think it'll be interesting and hopefully from a lot of different designers' perspective. So it's more, I guess it's more encompassing than just the craft chat that we're all kind of sick to death with now. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever, right? Okay, cool, we'll figure it out. But what about the mushy stuff, the stuff that we don't tend to introspect on and talk about a lot? And that stuff is, for me, I think I always gravitated towards that stuff. I'm not the best designer. I'm not so deep in all of these vertical in design. So I would much rather go broad and also much rather introspect. So I'm trying to lean into that kind of stuff.
I mentioned the whole complete change in design. As somebody who has been doing content creation and media type stuff for the last couple of years, do you feel the change at all that maybe people working 9 to 5 are feeling? I'm sure you see the posts and stuff on LinkedIn, but I'm just curious from your perspective as somebody who's on that side, have you noticed a change? I wonder too, the UX Playbook and Backlog you mentioned kind of plateaued a little bit. Do you see less people trying to get into design? Do you see less people wanting to learn about how to create a portfolio and things like that, and more the human side of it that are more universal and timeless? I'm just curious if that's something you've seen change over the last year or so.
There are some timeless or at least topics that are popular. Portfolio is always going to be one of them. But the output of the portfolio is probably different, like the way we show it and all that stuff. So that was always going to be a really popular topic. I have noticed, just from UX Playbook perspective, is traffic has gone way down, revenue has gone way down. It's just, it wasn't what it was, right? It wasn't when I worked in design. The things I wrote about is probably not as relevant today, or you could just find the information so much easier and then bish bash bosh, you're off to the races, right? So it has changed there. So I think education itself in this world has definitely shifted. And I'm like, okay, I'm also cognizant that your audience grows with you over time. So the folks that maybe have followed me for a while, because I think I've been writing online for 4 years now, but eventually they will grow up. So the junior that came in the door maybe has bought UX Playbook is probably no longer a junior now. The juniors care about portfolios and stuff, but what happens when they're mid or senior or people just run through their careers really fast? What then do they care? So I'm also thinking about what's the longevity of your audience, and then what are some other areas that you can basically make, what's your take on this area, right? Versus just the beginning. I think that's kind of how I think about it.
So here is an interesting question for you. When people see people post online, creating videos, content, they see the likes, they see the engagement, and they think, wow, that's really cool, glamorizing the kind of star, right? But the opposite of that, there's stuff that's not glamorous about it, okay? But here's the question I have for you. What are things that you think people might not glamorize, but should, when it comes to creating stuff like this?
Ooh, what should they glamorize but they don't glamorize, but they should. Wow.
They don't glamorize, but they should. So the things that like you get out of it that like nobody sees that like maybe people should hype up more. So it's like the opposite of like, but there's always the question like, oh, nobody like thinks about the shitty things that happen. But what are like the really good things that like nobody knows about or talks about when it comes to being in the spotlight all the time? I'm curious.
I don't consider myself being in the spotlight, but running a creator business has its, things are great. I think this is probably similar to some remote work stuff as well, where yes, you do have that flexibility. Again, I took 4 months off and nobody knew that apart from if I told you. I wrote in my newsletter and had pictures of me abroad and stuff. But yeah, you can basically take a sabbatical and still be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I think that's great, right? Of course, you have to get to a place where you can physically do that and the product help and also content help. So that kind of setup was really good. Back then, it was still a balance of 50% revenue. If there was no sponsorship, the product could cope and then vice versa. Now it's different. Now it's basically 99% the other way. What else should they think that's good? That's not. I don't know. Do you have something for this?
Yeah,
this one's hard.
Well,
dude.
I
This
think
one's
like
really hard.
the little things like because I post a lot on LinkedIn, I post shit a lot, and the downloads are solid on the episodes, like on my RSS feed. But like my social media is like shit, dude. It's I posted something the other day and I got 300 impressions, dude, on LinkedIn. I've got 20,000 followers. Like how on earth? It doesn't make sense. Like the math just doesn't work out. So I get no engagement on LinkedIn, which is like totally fine. But every once in a while, somebody messages me. And they're just like, dude, I love that thing that you just posted. It's like they didn't comment, they didn't like it, whatever. But it's like people are still getting something out of it. And I don't know, you shouldn't glamorize this because it's whatever. But it just makes you feel good. You're like, wow, I had an impact on that one person in that moment. And it made a difference to them. It doesn't happen like all the time, but I don't know, those little moments, it's like you look at my numbers and they're complete shit and they're probably like people like I think I get likes sometimes because people just feel sorry for me. But those comments though, that like people just send me offline or something and nobody sees it, which is fine. I wish they would like fucking post it. You like it? Why don't you just leave a goddamn comment so everybody can see? But it's still like those little moments I feel like are really cool. Pay the bills.
That's true. I had a message like that the other day and I asked this girl, I was like, oh, I haven't seen you comment on the post. And she's like, yeah, I've never commented. And I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, the appreciation is real. Yeah, some people are really nice and they just want to show their support. And it kind of makes it less one-to-many and more one-to-one. And it just makes it more personable when people are like, oh yeah, I like what you did. Or even when you reach out to another creator, it was like, oh dude, saw this thing. It was really cool. Yeah, those are the very cool moments. Another one connected to that, now you've just reminded me, is also connecting with folks like you and the whole creator community. I don't think that would have happened I think when I was in design, it was like, yes, I had this, maybe the local design community. I wasn't that active at events overseas or internationally, but maybe just in the country. But now it's like, a bunch of folks everywhere in the world. I traveled to Spain and organized a tiny meetup. And these folks took me to this lunch spot. And I don't think anybody knew each other. They were like, oh, what's going on? And yeah, it was just a fun time. Turns out I also used to work with a guy in Mexico. He's a Swedish guy, but now he works in Spain. And it was just very cool. And I feel like it just made the world a little bit smaller.
I love that, dude. Yeah, I was going to say something similar. So like we're on the Slack channel with a bunch of other content folks and like creators building cool stuff. And the like real connections, like my wife makes fun of me all the time because she calls like my LinkedIn friends. I'm like, get out of here. These are my friends, like I have kids and a family. So like I don't get to go all over the place and travel a whole lot, like especially overseas. But like, I feel like knowing that I could and hang out with a bunch of people in a bunch of cool cities is kind of nice, I'm not going to get to go to Config this year. There's a lot of people going to Config that I know. It's like, I know that if I went...
Yeah, it would be a bar.
Yeah, right. Like just knowing that, like just knowing if I could go, my other friends would be impressed with all the people I know. But that kind of stuff is really cool. And I think it's like behind the scenes and I don't like promote that kind of stuff too much because it feels obnoxious. But yeah, that to me is like a really cool thing. That I love. Yeah. All right. So I've had you for a little while now. We've had some technical difficulties. So like this has been a mess. Again, one of the great things about post-production is we can stitch it all together. Nobody will ever know. It's funny. I actually had a Catlow not long ago. I had, like I said, had some technical difficulties. So we didn't get to do the Q&A afterwards. And we had to schedule a time to do the Q&A. And she thought she was so smart. And she's like, she wore the same outfit and everything else. And I'm like, show up. I had a beard with like the curly mustache in the beginning of the episode. And in the end, I was like shaved, shorter hair, different shirt on. I'm like, I didn't even think about that. But anyway, if you're watching Kat's episode on YouTube, you can see the difference. But anyway, I was going to say, normally I have a bunch of questions I ask all the guests. You've already done those. We did a live event and I did the this or that question. So I already done those with you. I don't have any other random questions. So I'm just going to keep going for a little bit. If that's all right, we'll just close it out. I got a question. Yeah. This is a kind of funny question. Episode 51, Chris, young, cute, little spry Chris, episode 51. If episode 51, Chris, could see you where you're at today, you think he'd be impressed, worried, confused? What do you think? What would episode 51 think about episode 151, Chris?
I think he'll be a bit confused. I think he'll be happy to know that things worked out, but not in the way he thought. I guess he also would be looking forward to a bunch of the stuff that we've done since then. I feel like we've progressed in a lot of ways, right? How I think about what I'm doing now, to what we're doing now, to what we've learned in this thing. Again, like entrepreneurship is just a wild ass ride, and it's more about your psychology than anything. Because at any minute you could just be like, I'm not working today, I quit, everybody's fired, that's it, whatever. So it's definitely that kind of tough lesson. I think episode 51, Chris, was still very optimistic, didn't really know what he was getting himself into. And he's a little bit wiser now, but again, maybe episode 500, Chris will be like, episode 151, Chris, talking shit. So who knows?
Well, yeah, we'll have you back every 100 episodes. Actually, this is a fun thing. Okay. Like I've done a lot of episodes. I never did a 50th episode thing. I never did a 100 episode thing. Like I probably won't do like I don't know. It's just never been my thing. But I think it's funny to actually bring back people like every 100 episodes just to see where they're at. And I've actually, it goes on longer now because I actually pivoted. So we talked about this, like getting burnt out a little bit. Like I kind of got burnt out, like the grind and every single week and blah, blah, blah. And when I published those, especially like YouTube or something, it's like nobody watches 60 minutes worth of like just talking heads. So anyway, I've started to pivot to like doing every other week, but every other week I do a cognition catalog episode, which is like short, punchy 15-minute episodes, quick. So those episodes actually now go every other week. So I'm doing less of the interviews and more of the cognition catalog stuff. So anyway, when you come back on for episode 251, it'll be twice as long now, whenever that is. So I don't know. I have to figure that out.
Dude, I've got a question about this because I'm on a every other week cadence as well with the show. And I was like, shit, if I'm leaning into content, does that mean I need to publish more frequently? And, you've been doing it forever and you're like, yo, that's a lot of work, a lot of grind. What's your advice here? Is it figure out your own sketch? Is it chop it up a little bit?
Yeah, I actually was talking with J. Neil Dalal not long ago. For anybody who doesn't know him, he does a sneak peek where he talks to like people doing Figma. And before that, he had the Design MBA podcast and he was doing weekly and he started doing seasons. So he'll just do a bunch and then release them. And I've been thinking about doing the same thing with an arc because I was actually thinking about this because it is a grind, dude. Every week I'm like, oh God, I got to do another one. But I actually was thinking about doing more like 10 episodes, release them every other week. So that's about 6 months worth of content. And then, but having an arc to it. And then instead of just finding random people to do an episode, what do you want to talk about? Like, I usually do a 30-minute thing, having more of like themes. So I was thinking about one about AI, right? Because AI is really big. And not talking about AI tools, but like, how is AI affecting you as a designer? And all of the conversations are just with real designers, real people. It doesn't have to be like famous people, but just like real people in different industries and stuff and like how AI is impacting them. So, recording 10 episodes of those and then just releasing those every other week and doing seasons, more like TV shows kind of.
Right.
And then giving myself 4 months in between or 2 months in between or something.
I have a time off, a rest day. So if I was like a listener, I would be like, if I want to learn about AI, Jeremy has this series and he can, basically the person could skip to and from different episodes within the series and get a really good understanding. There's someone else. Do you know the writer Mark Manson? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck?
Oh, yeah. I know the book. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the guy's name. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, the writer of that book, he used to do his podcast and he completely pivoted to instead of episodic, no, there's still episodic, but it's not with interviews or guests. What he does is he spends a shitload of time. So his team spends a month and maybe more to research just one topic and it's called Solved. So if you want to learn about values, if you want to learn about love, if you want to learn about ego, basically it's a whole history from whenever the first word was mentioned in literature to all the philosophy behind it and to the modern day application. And they're like 4-hour episodes. And I thought, holy crap, that's a great, positioning. Because, yeah, you could listen to a ton of episodes on one subject and not really get the nuggets. And obviously, this is what he does. And he's an author and he's very thorough in his research. He's got a team of like 20 people. But I thought that to be a very interesting way of doing it. Just once a month. But that episode, holy shit, is that really well thought out and just everything you have. You don't need to speak about it again. And that's the premise of his show. Just one episode about ego and you never need to think about or read about it again.
You know what this reminds me of? So my wife and I, so actually I'll back up. I'm really weird when it comes to TV shows. I get really anxious, maybe is the wrong word. I don't know. I just feel weird watching shows where bad things happen. For instance, I hated watching Breaking Bad. I hated watching Breaking Bad because it's like this awful, terrible anti-hero that you're supposed to root for, but like he's doing awful things. Very bad decisions. You know they're the wrong decisions, and you're just like, he's fucking over his family and everything else. And it's like, why I'm watching this guy like be terrible. And it's a testament to the writers, obviously, because it was such a well-written and produced show that it made me feel this visceral reaction to it. But anyway, I hate watching that kind of shit. Handmaid's Tale is another one where I just hate it. And it felt so real. It just feels, right. God, this could happen today. Like, God, fuck, this is real life. I get this weird reaction, and it's like, knowing I have 5 seasons, like 50-something episodes to watch before it closes out, it gives me anxiety. So anyway, my point there is I love mini series where it's like, I don't mind watching this awful person for like, I know it's like a investment of 5 hours or so. You know what I mean? So I like the idea of that sort of mini series-esque thing where, because I feel at this point, it's like 150 episodes. If somebody comes to Beyond UX Design, where do they start? Do they start at the beginning and then listen to all 150 episodes? Do they just skip around? There's no coherent kind of theme to it. But I love the idea of that where it's like, I search through and I find that one thing. It's, that one word and whatever it was, I want to go listen to that thing, a deep dive on that or whatever. And I'm done. And I can kind of move on. I don't know. I love that idea of the smaller seasonal thing where it's like very specific, listen to 10 episodes, then you're done and move on, go listen to somebody else for a little bit, then maybe come back later. So I don't know. Yeah, I love that idea though. Like one big episode though. That's a cool thing to think about. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think there's so much space to try different formats because I think everyone is, again, potentially sick of this, or at least if they're not sick of it, they're willing to give a shot to something new, right? And I think content-wise, formats are really important. So it's that tweaking of like, the $1 versus $100 format or whatever the experiment is that people understand format-wise, I think is really interesting. So yeah, fascinated with what he did because I was just like, holy crap, that's right down his lane and it's genius. It's so good. And I just want to find little more nuggets like that from folks that are really good at content and see how we can adopt and remix it.
Yeah. But you asked me that question, I gave you that answer. Let's see, like 6 months from now, did I actually do it? Did I actually get there? Because it's a lot easier to just have like random one-off conversations and then publish those and just plan and organize and get it out there in time and everything else. And like, it's just me. I do this all by myself. And so like getting in there and doing that, I don't know. It's very daunting. But at the same time, like we mentioned before, like Marvin, they paid me for 24 episodes, which is a long time. So it's like, I get paid for it. I got to do it, which like makes it less like hobby and more work, which adds anxiety, which makes it harder to do. So anyway, I know it's just like, it's a mess. It's like, you think it's really great. You got this money, but I spent the money. All that money went to paying freaking taxes this year. I don't have that money anymore. So I got to work. Now I'm like in like work debt. I'm indebted to Marvin to finish these episodes. So Marvin's great to work with, but I mean, it's one of those things, man. Like, I don't know, dude. It's just like, I go in phases of enjoying it and just feeling like, fuck, I gotta do another one. Which is why I like actually the cognition catalog, because I find those really fun. And I made a commitment to myself to finish the cognitive bias codex. And it's like 180 and I've got 40 in. I only recently started doing recording them, but I've got like a bunch done, but now it's like start over and kind of, so now 20, it's like, I got a lot to do. I don't know, which is fun, but I like those because I find those like really interesting and it helps me learning about them and researching them and stuff. So I don't know, man. I like alternating makes it a little bit easier too than just every week.
Yeah, sorry. Another creative question for the folks that probably don't care about what we're talking about. But solo episodes, interesting because again, it doesn't have to be around a specific topic. Like you're speaking about a bias and it's helpful, it's educational. But have you thought about just like solo episodes or live streams or another format where it's more casual that folks get to know you? Because I also think that we should definitely carve out a time, not just be helpful because we want to be helpful first, but also, well, who's Jeremy? Of course, over the course of 150 episodes, people kind of know you, but there's some things that you just don't mention because it just doesn't come in conversation, right?
No, that's a good point.
Any kind of like brand sprinkle of Jeremy that you want to...
I don't know. So it's interesting. If you go back and listen to the first episodes, I actually did only solo. I actually didn't do interviews. I would just come up with a topic, and they were essentially like essays that I wrote that I would just read, and I ran out of stuff to say, which is why, and then it's funny, I started doing like every other week, and then doing like an interview every other week. And then I was like, I don't have anything else to write about. I'm out of ideas. I'll just do interviews and let the guests come up with interesting stuff to say. And then I got to the point where I'm like, I bored with the interviews, not bored, but just burnt out with the interviews. So then I started doing the cognitive bias stuff again. But like, I've never done one where it's just like, hey, this is me. Let me tell you about me. I've done a couple episodes with Hong Shu where we just shot the shit, shot the shit, where we just talked about stuff. And it was like a 3-hour episode. It was like really long. And we talked a lot about like our parents and like just stuff, stuff like that. But of course it was 3 hours. Like people didn't listen all the way through. But I like that idea though. But as we're like doing this, I'm actually thinking about like how to change, like to make it more fun for me so that I want to keep doing it. And I like the idea of just one of the benefits of doing this show is I have literally met so many freaking people that I would have never met otherwise. I've had awesome conversations with people that I would have never had otherwise. And so, like, I wonder if there's a thing there. Is it just like that personal aspect and just shooting the shit and more personal questions versus like work-related questions? And then it becomes like what you're doing with, like rectangles where it becomes big D design and you could talk about anything to anybody. I don't know. Maybe that's something to explore. I don't know. You got me thinking, dude. Like brain's moving.
I think it's because at the end of the day, yes, it's beyond UX, but more than that, it's Jeremy is the key person of influence, right? And it's your thing, you've built it. So again, if it's ever going to last, what are the maximum fun things that we could do that just so happens that also aligns with whatever other people care about? So I do want to put that seed in there because I think, as long as you're doing that, you could do this forever.
I love that.
So, and I'm thinking about doing more casual episodes. I'm thinking about, okay, how do you balance like usefulness, but also the brand building? The brand building is basically just letting people know who you are and having fun. And like the fun things over time will be like these kind of either like rituals or things that people remember that keep on coming up again. Yeah, I think that's important. And I've had folks just say, wait, why don't you do behind the scenes content? I'm like,
yeah, who wants to see that? Right? I know.
Like, do anything, right? But I get what they mean because they're like, no, but
the
like
human element.
What do you actually do? Like, I don't just want to learn design from you or think about read your perspective. I want to know who this is. And I think that's going to be like critical for a lot of what we're doing. And also, again, like a lot of these CEOs are like doing keynotes and stuff. And it's because like consumers crave it. Like they don't just want another press release. They want to know who the guy is, apparently.
No, it's true. It's funny, dude, because I mentioned how shitty my LinkedIn engagement is. And when I look at the posts that I've done, I started saying fuck it a lot and being like, my engagement fucking sucks. Who cares? Whatever. I'm going to post whatever the fuck I want. And I would post, hey, I'm like, and I was joking, but I was like, look, I made some really shitty latte art. And it was literally just, I steamed some milk and poured the espresso on top or poured the milk on it. It was like a blob or whatever. And it got like 16,000 impressions. And I look at like, I post some about my bias. It's like 500 impressions this week. So, but my takeaway there is I think people are just sick of just being constantly beat over the head with educational things. And I think when I think about right now, kind of tying it back to like how everything is changing, I think people are looking for something beyond what, like how to do a thing, how to make this thing, how to use that framework, whatever. And I think people are looking more for that human connection. And it might even be like a lot of people are remote. I know a lot of people like going back to the office and stuff, but still a lot of people are remote. I'm fully remote. My team is 100% remote. Like there's a yearning for a human connection, I think, and getting to know people a little bit more. And it's not surprising to me. Like I post that and then I post about my wife getting a scouting award because she's a den leader at Cub Scouts. And that one got like a ton of engagement too. And it's like, I think people are looking for that, dude, honestly. You mentioned behind the scenes. It's not, here's how I edit a podcast, but it's more just like, hey, I'm working on blah, 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 and just being more personal. Right. I don't know. So anyway, there's something to that, dude. I love that. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a little smidge of what happens in Jeremy's life that you find interesting to share. And I think people would also be like, okay, cool. It's not maybe the thing that you do all the time. We don't want to be like 100% entertainment dudes, but yeah, definitely something I'm thinking about too.
I love that, dude. All right, so we had you for a long time. I don't even know how long this episode is with all the random restarts we had to do earlier with Descript. But last question, before we get out of here, what is one thing that you wish more designers understood about building something on their own that they're just ignoring? That one thing.
Oh, there's so many. But if I could just pick one, whatever the idea and vision and execution steps, no, that is actually not the way. So the perfect plan or the perfect thing does not exist. You just got to start building and digging into the problems before you know like the final output. And I think even if you know that, even if it sounds trite, it is actually the thing like you're going to come across time and time again, no matter what you're thinking about building. And I know this is going to happen with rectangles. So that's why it's that work in progress. I have where I want to get to directionally, but how I get there, what it becomes is almost not even in my control anymore. And we're just going to solve one problem at a time.
I think we talked about this the last time you were on, but the amount of people who have good ideas, you know, everybody's got a good idea. But what's the percentage of the people that actually did something about it? You know, I can't remember if it was you or Tommy Joke or somebody was talking about this a while ago. I mean, maybe it was on Slack or something. They're like, they were getting shit from somebody who was like, yeah, I had that idea 10 years ago. And they were like, yeah, but you didn't do anything with it. I'm actually doing something with it now, right? Anyway, the people who just have the idea, but then actually like go and do something. For me, man, I love this. And the reason why I come back to this is just like, there's so much ambiguity. There's so much concern around our jobs and what's going to happen with AI. And are we going to have design careers in 5-10 years? It will drive you crazy. And if you don't have something to, maybe not even fall back on, but just something to focus on to get your mind off of it, you know, and maybe it turns into something that makes you a little bit of extra spending cash and a little bit here, a little bit there. But just, I feel like I've got a really good conversation I'm having with Frank Bach soon about this exact thing, which is getting out there and just doing stuff that's not related to your job. Just makes you a more well-rounded human, regardless of designer, you know, like whether it's art or music or Cub Scouts or camping or hiking or just bird watching, whatever the fuck it is. I just feel like there's so much, people just get scared of starting it. Just do it. Pick up a guitar, take some lessons online, or better yet, pay somebody to go take lessons in person, you know, like, or whatever, singing lessons. I'm doing voice acting, right? Taking lessons there. And I don't know. There's so much people just scared to start. And just, I love that. I love that advice. Just start doing it.
One last thing about this. I think it's also the imbalance of consumption versus creation. You're consuming way more. So that's going to be like 80%. And then there's less time to actually create, make, do, right? So I think we're falling down that rabbit hole with everything we have, all the distractions available. But if we can tip that scale, just a little bit more creation, a little bit less consumption, you don't need like 100% creation, right? Because then the world doesn't exist and that could be bad, but just a little bit more, just move over, lessen that consumption of whatever it is that's distracting you and go and make stuff and, you know, play like a little kid, right?
Play like a little kid. I fucking love that, dude. I love that. Excellent closing advice. Chris, this has been an awesome conversation. I hope people listening got something out of this. We didn't really have a specific topic, but I just enjoyed, as always, just hanging out, chatting with you. Before we get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you, get all your stuff, UX Playbook, Backlog, rectangles, all that stuff.
I think LinkedIn is probably the best place, but I do want to have one plug. I'm not sure when this is coming out, But on May the 27th is the live stream that I'm launching Rectangles. And I'm going to be diving into like how I decided this name. It's kind of silly, but there was a thought process behind it after basically going through 80 different names, and then how I thought about the visuals and branding side of it. What emotional feeling did I want that I'll be talking about too? And then I'll show off the website and the process we did. I'm working with another designer on this, and it's still work in progress, but kind of just want to show you the Figma file, jump into Framer and be like, oh, this is actually what we did because this is weird and wonderful and like interesting because of X. Peeling back the curtain, a little bit behind the scenesy, but not just me talking about this project, but try to extract some lessons out for the folks that want to do this themselves, basically. So yeah, that's our live event. That's May 27th, which is a Wednesday. You can find all the information on LinkedIn or rectangles.fm.
This will probably be out after that live event, but it'll probably be on YouTube. Find it on YouTube.
Yes.
And then go, we'll put some links into the show notes. Chris, as always, man, love hanging out, love talking to you. Good luck on everything you got going on, man. And we'll have you back. Hopefully we actually talk before episode 251. But we'll definitely have you back. Hopefully I'm still doing episodes when it gets to 200s. We'll see. But yeah, good talking to you, man, as always. Thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Well, all right, y'all. That's it for Chris and me for today. If this episode got you thinking about building something of your own instead of waiting for a job to feel secure, I'd love to hear your take. And if you're curious how our team's doing without a Figma license, well, I'd be happy to chat. Ask me anything. Send me a message on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at hello@beyonduxdesign.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if the show's been helpful, the best way to support it is simple. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a quick review. That would help me out so much more than you could possibly imagine. And if you want to go a step further and help keep the show independent and ad-free, check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. You'll get early access to episodes and the full video archive for as little as $5 a month. Everything else, episodes, newsletter, show notes, it all lives at beyonduxdesign.com. And if your team is tired of reinventing the wheel every time a new project kicks off, Mobbin gives you access to over 600,000 beautifully designed UI screens and user flows, all searchable with AI. It's the kind of tool that makes your whole team faster. Visit mobbin.com/beyondux to get 20% off Mobbin Pro and see why more design teams are making it a company-wide staple in 2026. And until next time, remember, you're more than a designer because there's more to UX and design. I'll see you around. Take care, y'all.